This morning we're learning and sharing more about the family killed in the murder-suicide, the two children and their parents, Matthew and T. Mitchell.
When we first looked into the tragedy at 2113 Kingston Street, we asked if the perfect life was a mask. In the days since, that mask hasn't just slipped, it is shattered. New details from the Houston police and those close to the family suggest that the Mitchells weren't just battling the pressures of a restaurant empire. They were carrying secrets that the public was never meant to see. Secrets that lived in the quiet spaces between the award ceremonies and the social media posts.
Is video of the pair featured in a Great Day Houston interview just last year. Matthew Mitchell and T. Mitchell were sharing their new venture and Traveler's Cart and also opened up about their relationship.
Welcome back to The Dark Minds. To the thousands of you who joined us following our last report, thank you for being part of this investigation. This community has been instrumental in surfacing details the headlines are only just beginning to touch. Today, we reveal a devastating new update regarding Thy Mitchell that has shifted the heart of this entire investigation. And we look into the 10% loan theory, a financial pressure point that might explain why a man who seemingly had everything decided to end it all. If you are following this case for the truth behind the facade, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. There is a point in every investigation where the clinical data of a police report collides with the devastating reality of human loss. We often speak of these tragedies in numbers: 4 lives, 1 house, 1 afternoon. But numbers are hollow. They don't capture the weight of what was actually taken. As the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences moved deeper into their examination, a detail emerged that has changed the entire frequency of this case. It is a detail that transforms a tragedy into something almost impossible to comprehend. Thy Mitchell was pregnant. This wasn't just a loss of 4 lives, it was the systematic erasure of a future that was already being planned, already being felt. When we look at the crime scene now, we aren't just looking at the end of a restaurant dynasty or the collapse of a marriage. We are looking at a nursery that will never be used, a sibling who will never be met, and a mother who was carrying the ultimate symbol of hope when she was met with the ultimate act of violence. And then, there are the children who were already here. Maya, just 8 years old. Max, only 4. They weren't caught in a crossfire. They weren't the victims of a chaotic struggle. Investigators found them in their beds, the place where they were supposed to be the most secure, the place where the world is supposed to stay outside. The fact that they were found there suggests a level of premeditation that is chilling. It suggests that their final moments weren't marked by noise, but by a terrifying, intimate betrayal. This is the emotional anchor that pulls this case into the depths. This discovery adds a layer of darkness to Matthew's final actions that defies every instinct of human nature. It defies logic, yet it demands a ruthless analysis. How does a father look at his sleeping children and a man look at his pregnant wife and decide that the only way forward is to ensure there is no forward at all? We are no longer just looking at a man who broke under pressure. We are looking at someone who decided to play God over his own bloodline. But as we mourn the future that was stolen, a new question begins to surface, one that lives in the forensic evidence left behind. The police found the family in their beds, but they didn't find any signs of a struggle. No defensive wounds, no shattered glass. It was as if the house itself had been lulled into a state of total compliance before the end. Was this peace, or was it something more clinical? As we look at the toxicology report still pending, we have to ask, did Matthew Mitchell ensure his family was asleep long before he pulled the trigger? Or is the truth even more haunting, that they trusted him until the very last second? While the forensic evidence tells us how the Mitchell family died, the digital and financial trails may be the only things left to tell us how they lived in those final months. In the wake of the tragedy, the community hasn't just been mourning, they've been searching for the the crack in the foundation that everyone missed. While the Houston Police Department has not yet released formal bank records or a motive, the timing of Matthew Mitchell's professional expansion is impossible to ignore. From a criminological perspective, we often look for trigger events, moments where the weight of a hidden reality becomes too heavy to sustain. Consider the math of a perceived, perfect life. The Mitchells weren't just running a restaurant, they were building an empire. The recent opening of Traveler's Cart, the crushing responsibilities of Matthew's role as CEO of the Texas Center for Drug Development, and the relentless overhead of a $1.2 million mortgage in the heart of River Oaks. In the corridors of social media and hospitality circles, A specific, chilling theory has begun to take root: the 10% loan. Rumors of a high-interest private bank loan, a financial anchor that was allegedly eating him alive, have surfaced. In the world of high-stakes entrepreneurship, image isn't just a luxury. Image is equity. It is the currency that buys you the next deal, the next award, the next board seat. But what happens when that equity vanishes? If we look at Matthew Mitchell through a psychological lens, we have to ask, was he chasing a horizon that kept moving? To a man defined by his success, the prospect of a public collapse, the repossession of the River Oaks home, the bankruptcy of the restaurants, the fall from the heights of the Houston elite might have felt more terminal than death itself. In many cases of family annihilation, the perpetrator doesn't see their actions as a crime, but as a twisted form of protection. They believe they are saving their family from the shame of a reality they can no longer control. If the money was gone, did Matthew feel his identity was gone too? And if he could no longer provide the life he had promised, did he decide that no one else was allowed to live it either? The 10% loan remains, for now, a theory whispered in the comments and discussed in the shadows of the industry. But as investigators begin to peel back the layers of Matthew's corporate filings and private debts, they are finding a paper trail that leads directly to that quiet house on Kingston Street. But there is a detail in the financial timeline that doesn't quite fit the narrative of a man who had lost everything. 3 days before the welfare check, a significant transfer was initiated, not out of his accounts, but into an offshore trust that neither the bank nor the family's lawyers seemed to know existed. Who was that money for if the entire family was meant to be gone? And if the motive was truly financial ruin, why was Matthew Mitchell still moving pieces on a board he was about to flip over? In the digital age, we are never truly alone. Our lives are broadcast in real time through pings, likes, and location tags. But for the Mitchell family, that heartbeat of connectivity flatlined long before the police arrived. To understand what happened at 2113 Kingston Street, we have to look into the void, the 20-hour gap where a family disappeared in plain sight. The last confirmed contact with the outside world happened on Sunday night. After that, the digital trail goes cold. For 20 hours, while the city of Houston moved through its Monday morning rush, while the staff at Traveler's Table prepped for a busy lunch service, and while patrons continued to post glowing reviews of their Sunday brunch, the house on Kingston Street was a tomb. It is a haunting juxtaposition, a city still dining at their tables and celebrating their brand, while the architects of that brand lay silent in the dark. Lai Mai, Thai's sister, was the first to feel the weight of that silence. It started as a missed text, something mundane, a check-in that went unanswered. But as Monday morning bled into afternoon, the silence shifted from busy to ominous. Phones were ringing, but no one was picking up. Messages were sent, but they remained unread. What happens in a home when the phones go silent but the clocks keep ticking? In those 20 hours, the River Oaks neighborhood remained as pristine and quiet as ever. Neighbors walked their dogs, delivery trucks made their rounds. No one heard a struggle. No one heard the shots. The silence of the neighborhood had become a shroud, masking a tragedy that was already complete. But the timeline raises a chilling question for the HPD. If the tragedy occurred Sunday night or early Monday morning, what was happening inside those walls during the day on Monday? When investigators entered, they found a house that looked almost prepared. There was no chaos. The dinner dishes from Sunday were cleared. The children's school bags were packed and waiting by the door for a Monday morning that they would never see. It suggests that the transition from a living home to a crime scene was instantaneous, a clean break from reality. But as forensic teams analyzed the home's smart devices, they found a localized anomaly. At 11 a.m. on Monday, hours after Lai Mai began her frantic calls and hours before the police were summoned, the home's smart security system was manually disarmed from an internal keypad, then rearmed 3 minutes later. If the family was already gone, who walked to the keypad in that silent house? And why, in the middle of a tragedy, would they care about locking the door? The 20-hour gap isn't just a missing piece of the timeline, it's a missing presence. The police are searching for a shadow, a ghost in the machine that suggests that for at least 3 minutes on Monday morning, someone was still moving through the silence of 2113 Kingston Street. When we look at a crime of this magnitude, the human mind instinctively searches for a monster. We look for a history of outward rage, for a trail of broken glass and police reports. But in the case of Matthew Mitchell, the monster didn't live in the light. It lived in the high-stakes, pressurized vacuum of his own expectations. In criminology, there is a specific, terrifying profile that fits this narrative with unsettling precision: the anomic family annihilator. Anomie is a state of social instability, a breakdown of standards and values when a person can no longer achieve the goals society has set for them. For a man like Matthew Mitchell, his entire identity was fused with his status. He was the CEO. He was the award-winning restaurateur. He was the provider for a growing family in a $1 million River Oaks estate. To the world, he was winning. But if the rumors of that 10% loan are true, if the financial foundation was eroding beneath his feet, he wasn't just facing bankruptcy. He was facing the death of his identity. The anomic annihilator doesn't usually kill out of hatred or traditional malice. They kill out of a twisted, perverted sense of mercy. In their fractured psychology, they believe they are saving their loved ones from a fate worse than death, the public shame of a collapse. To Matthew, the idea of his pregnant wife and his children, Maya and Max, watching their world be dismantled, watching the cars repossessed, the home lost, and the brand tarnished, might have been more unbearable than the act of taking their lives. He likely saw himself not as a murderer, but as a protector who was closing the book before the story turned ugly. It is a terrifying paradox. A man who loves his family so much that he decides they cannot exist without the success he promised them. He would have looked at his sleeping children and seen a future of struggle he couldn't control. He would have looked at Thy, carrying their unborn child, and seen a witness to his failure. In that dark internal logic, he chose a controlled end over a chaotic fallout. This brings us to a question that hits closer to home than we'd like to admit. We live in a culture that demands constant, visible winning. We celebrate the hustle, the expansion, and the vibe, but we have no language for the struggle. We have created a world where the facade is the only thing that matters. Is our society so obsessed with the win that we've made the fail feel like a death sentence? I want to hear your thoughts on the pressure of success in the comments. Is the weight of the mask becoming too heavy for all of us? But even as we analyze the why, a new forensic anomaly has appeared. While searching the digital records of the home's smart fridge, a device that logs every interaction, investigators found a note drafted at 3:14 a.m. on Monday. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a detailed, professional grocery list for a dinner party scheduled for Friday night. If the anomic profile suggests a man planning an end, why was he still planning for a future just hours before the silence began? Was this a man trying to convince himself everything was fine, or was there someone else in that house who still believed in Friday night? The house at 2113. Kingston Street is now quiet, but the air around it remains thick with questions that refuse to be answered. As of this moment, the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences is still processing the final pieces of this devastating puzzle. We are waiting for the toxicology reports that will tell us if the silence in that home was forced or if it was peaceful, waiting for the forensic financial audits that will either confirm the crushing weight of that alleged 10% loan or reveal a different motive entirely. But while the rest of the world moves on to the next headline, we stay here. Because a family this visible, a life this curated, doesn't just vanish without leaving a trail. We are currently following the paper trail that the mainstream news cycle is choosing to ignore. We are digging into the corporate filings of the Texas Center for Drug Development and the private equity shifts that happened just weeks before the silence began. This isn't just about a crime. It's about the collapse of a dream and the psychological breakdown of a man who thought he could control the ending. If you want to be here when the financial records are unsealed, and if you want the deep dive into the psychological autopsy as the details are released, you need to be part of this community. This story isn't over. It is simply moving from the shadows of the home into the cold light of the courtroom and the ledger. Make sure you're subscribed and that your notifications are active. We are watching the clocks, and we are watching the records. For the Mitchell family, the time has run out, but for the truth, the clock is only just beginning to tick. But as we close this chapter, there is one final piece of evidence that has just been handed to our team. It's a neighbor's Ring camera footage from 4:12 a.m. Monday morning. It doesn't show a struggle. It doesn't show a break-in. It shows a single, dark sedan. not belonging to the Mitchells, idling at the end of the driveway for exactly 60 seconds before turning its lights off and rolling slowly into the dark. Who was watching the house when the world thought it was empty? We'll find out in the next episode.